And in my timeless search for animes that are classic and must be remembered, not only that, but animes that are filled with action, blood, gore, a little bit of horror, and if possible, cyberpunk. And among these animes, CITY OEDO 808 is probably on the top of the list. And this is basically a cop anime that drinks from the source of 80s and 90s action movies from Hollywood. Mostly the Lethal Weapons or Die Hards, but all blended with futuristic and cyberpunk elements and a little bit of horror. The story is about these 3 space prisoners that receive the chance of diminish their sentences if they work for the police as special cops that unravel mysteries regarding the organized crime on Earth. But the organization that gives them this chance keeps them on a leash, literally, because they have a collar in their necks with a time bomb that might explode in any minute in case they refuse the mission, try to escape during it, or just fail to accomplish them in time. Everything under the control of the police chief Hasegawa. Yes, if you remember the Suicide Squad immediately with this whole concept, that's what it is. But even though we have this very similar idea, the whole story here is interesting anyway. And this trio of characters are formed by the almost main character called Sengoku, and he is basically a version of Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon, the character Martin Riggs. He's always drunk and loves to break the rules just to do what's right. Plus, he doesn't mind responding the police chief with irony all the time. The second of the list is Gogo, this guy with a mohawk and this cool visor. A visor that permits him to see because he is actually blind. Plus, he is the strongest of the trio, basically a war tank. But at the same time, he's a very skillful hacker who can enter any system. And last but not least, you have this guy called Benten, who is kind of androgynous, and I thought he was a woman at first. But he is the most interesting for me because he is the best one in terms of combat. He can flip, somersault, plus he is the most mentally focused of all of them. His main weapon is the coolest one. He has this very thin wire that he pulls out of this weapon that they get when they become cops, and this wire can cut anything, so you know very well that he's gonna use it to cut arms, legs, everything. This anime is also an OVA, original video animation, so it is a contained story even though it is divided in 3 individual chapters, one for each cop. And it is produced by one of the best Japanese animation studios, Madhouse. They also produced one of my favorite short animes called The Running Man, which I already made a video here in the channel, so if you haven't watched yet, please go check it out because it is amazing. One of the best animations ever created, in my opinion. I'll leave the link of this video right here if you want to watch it later. The first chapter of this trilogy of stories has 2 names depending where you watch it. Virtual Death or Time Bomb. And it is focused on the character Sengoku. He needs to infiltrate in a skyscraper of the city, which is the tallest building of the city. His top is above the clouds actually, and this building was taken over by an AI, which is controlling all its systems. So the main central computer locked the entire building and locked many people inside of it as hostages. Plus, Sengoku needs to save a rich guy that controls the whole building called Kurokawa, and his office is on the top of the building. And this guy keeps some secrets for why the artificial intelligence decided to turn against the whole system and lock the entire building. To accomplish this mission, Sengoku will count with Benten and Gogu, although they appear a little less in this episode, but he will also count with the help of a robot called Varses, who is a kind of helper to the missions of these cops. This episode is fantastic and really grabbed my attention right away because it plays with the whole siege movie genre. Movies like Die Hard or Dread that I will talk very soon here in the channel in a special video, which you have this situation that needs to be solved involving usually terrorists or bad guys, and a brave hero that will save everybody in the end. But this whole genre mixed with the whole futuristic idea, having an AI, a bunch of machines that they have to fight, killer robots, etc., plus having a big mystery in the background that relates to the rich guy that is controlling everything, is what makes this part of the story outstanding. Plus all the relationships, the way that the dialogues play out, the comedy quips, it's all very 90s and 80s buddy cop movie. You have Sengoku and Police Chief Hasegawa teasing each other all the time, which is basically classic dynamic between captain and police officer from these movies, because they hate each other, but in the end they also need each other. And even though the trio of criminals are not exactly friends, there is a sense of companionship between them. They are actual partners in these missions. Plus, there is an interesting competition to see which of the three are the best one among them, which is very funny, but at the same time, when they act together, this is where they are most effective in accomplishing their goals, which makes them very charismatic. And also they have a fourth partner, that is the robot Varsus, who is responsible for helping them with all the necessary information and technological stuff they need during the missions. Also, he's almost like a C-3PO of Star Wars that keeps telling them the probabilities of something working out, and they all tell him to shut up. I'm not gonna give too many spoilers about the ending of this episode, since I would like all the people who hadn't watched so far to watch it, but suffice to say that the whole revelation at the end links back to the past of Kurokawa, and also links to a villain of the story that has a pretty scary look, which I loved. And if it was just this episode in the whole anime, it would be good enough. But the next episode also has two names, the Psychic Soldier or the Bait. And now it's focused on Gogo. The story starts with him going after another prisoner that also is part of the program of cops, and that also has an explosive collar around his neck. But this guy is trying to deactivate the collar and get rid of it using a very intricate machine that carefully unscrews and disassembles the collar piece by piece. The thing is that Gogo was sent after this guy because he sold some information about the COP program that they are part of to some military organization. Of course, this guy is not successful and he has his head exploded. Then the plot unravels in very interesting ways, with the revelation that the information that this guy sold is being used by the military corporation to create a new kind of effective robot killer. The whole old story of the military trying to test a new kind of perfect soldier. But the interesting thing is that this robot unit uses body parts of real people inside his own cybernetic carcass. Plus, he has psychic powers since he uses a human brain as well. Then we have Sengoku and Benten that are after some criminals who are trafficking human parts to this military organization. Then their cases converge into Gogo's case and what is his relation to the whole plot. Then we discover that the information that was sold to the military corporation by the guy who had his head exploded was used to find candidates to fight this new killer unit inside the COP program. And then it's obvious that the perfect candidate is Gogo. So a huge chase starts with the military after Gogo to capture him and have a special fight test to show the robot unit to possible buyers. When I watched this anime for the first time, I thought this middle story was the weakest one between the bunch, but watching it more times, I realized that it's freaking awesome. With a story that focuses on Gogo, we realize that even though he is the strongest one, he also has a dirty mouth. He is also the one who has more heart. And this is shown through his willingness to forgive people even though they commit mistakes to betray him. And it still is the least interesting story of the three, but the final battle between Gogo and the killer machine is the best of the whole anime. It takes place in a huge tower that will serve as a gladiatorial arena. Plus the way the whole battle ends is just fantastic, but no spoilers. Then we come to the third story that also has two names, Bloodthirst or Vampire. And this story obviously is focused on Benten that, like I said, is more mentally focused. He's also a more spiritual guy. He's always in touch with his samurai side, let's put it like that. The story starts very beautifully with Benten meeting a girl over a bridge, They talk about life. It's a very philosophical conversation, but then it develops in a plot of a series of murders being committed by a killer who uses some vampire methods. That is, he sucks blood of his victims, which brings Benton to this investigation. And this is my favorite story of the bunch, especially because it blends horror with cyberpunk and the whole futuristic theme. Plus, it also has some sci-fi elements regarding immortality. Benton's investigation takes him to a huge base that is above Earth and has a long tube that connects the base with the planet and has an elevator that transports the people from the planet to the base. Not giving too many spoilers, but he ends up finding many cryogenic tubes with people inside during an eternal sleep in which they are waiting to wake up in the future once a cure is found for their current diseases. A procedure that can only be paid by the multimillionaires, of course. And the man behind all this is the owner of the whole organization, a man called Sayonji, and he is also after the immortality himself. The more the investigation unravels, it is revealed that Sayonji developed a kind of a virus that is able to resurrect dead cells and create immortality, using the bodies of the people inside the cryogenic tubes to be able to test this virus. The problem is that one of these cryogenic tubes was opened, and as an effect of the whole virus injection, this person was also able to develop vampire powers. Obviously, this person was the one committing the crimes, but who is this person and why it was committing the crimes? I'm gonna leave for you when you watch it. And this is my favorite story because besides the horror elements, the whole investigation of the murders is the most interesting of the three stories for me. And all of that takes to a final combat in the end that takes place in a very gothic environment that is inside the space base that I mentioned, but in a section of it that is inside a cathedral that has this beautiful gothic architecture. All of this with the huge background of the stars of the space through the windows, and also a gigantic moon that gives this element of horror to the whole scene. Another fantastic climax. Anyway, this is CITY OEDO 808. It has these three awesome stories, each one with its own identity. It's a perfect mix of Blade Runner with 80s and 90s classic cop movie, plus it has a pinch of horror, which can only be fantastic. So, how about you? Have you watched CITY OEDO 808? What did you think? Comment below. Here's another great suggestion of anime for you to watch if you like this kind of animation, and also if you like the elements that this particular one has. So if you want more suggestions in the future, not only of animes, but cartoons, horror movies, action movies, all the good stuff that we love, please don't forget to leave your beloved like and also your most welcomed subscription in the channel so we can keep trashing forever. Alright? See you in the next trashing video and bye bye.